Hi, Robin. Welcome to Música First of all, I'd like to talk about the Pelagic Records, your own label that you have founded to release The Ocean, but soon became the house for so many artists. How does it feel for you to own a label and release not only your material, but other artists as well?
It's a great pleasure. It's something that wasn't really planned and kind of just happened when our the Ocean's label Metal Blade back in 2009 did not want to reissue an old record, and then I kind of started having the idea of doing it myself, and it all just grew from there. And now it's grown into something that is taking over pretty much all of my time. So it's challenging to manage, especially when I'm on tour with the Ocean, to get through all the just the day to day work for the label. But it's great fun. I love it. I've always loved like the side of management and strategizing as much as playing music. Really, I was never the guy who just wanted to play guitar in a band. I always enjoyed all aspects of it, pretty much.
Hmm.
Not all to the same degree, but I need to keep myself like interested, and the key there is diversity. And so the label gives me a lot of other things to do that I don't do within the band, and that's great. And also, of course, getting to work with bands and artists that I love, genuinely love, and to watch them grow slowly and take small baby steps and then huge
Hmm.
leaps at one point is immensely gratifying for me. So I'm very happy that I get to do all of that.
Pelagic Records got like a standard for quality, mainly on the vinyl releases. How does it feel for you to have so many quality products and beautiful vinyl colors, and not being as expensive as the main record labels are right now?
Is that true? Well, that's great to hear. I hope. I always fear that we're too expensive, especially now when costs have just exploded throughout
Yeah.
the pandemic. Like the costs of paper have gone up by up to 300% for some special papers that we used to use, and it's become very challenging because obviously you can't pass that on directly to the people buying the record. Otherwise, it
Yeah.
would just become unfeasible. But yeah, good things, quality things usually cost a bit of money, and
True.
we've realized that um, we've realized with the Ocean, I guess, like more than a decade ago, that there is a large amount of people out there, even for niche music like what we do, that wants to have something special and unique and good looking, and that are willing to
Yeah.
pay for it. So we always try to offer like a cheap alternative in terms of like a black vinyl variant with like a
Hmm.
standard packaging for those who only really want to have something on vinyl to listen to. I think that's very important. But we also usually try to go wild, and imagine things that are difficult to realize and expensive to realize regarding packaging, working with different paper materials and embossings and hot foil and all these things. And for me, that's always a great challenge from the production end, to go to the limits to see what's physically possible and also financially, of course. And
Yeah.
yeah, like I said, with the Ocean, we realized that we have a big deal of fans who really love that aspect of the band, that we put great attention to detail. And so we realized already in 2010 that we can make these like really fancy box sets.
Hmm.
And at that time, our label back then, Metal Blade, they weren't really convinced that this would work, which is partially why we got the vinyl rights back from them. I believe that was their biggest mistake.
Yeah. True.
But it was good for us. It was the beginning of Pelagic, basically. And since then, we've always been, yeah, on the edge of exploring and seeing what's possible in terms of physical music packaging. And I find that very very interesting, and it's all part of the great whole. Like obviously the music is the most important aspect
Hmm.
for all of our artists, but the way you present the record and the artwork, the merch designs, like the way you present yourself live on stage with lighting and everything that you do, I think all contributes to the vision that you have as an artist. And for me, it's always been important to pay attention to all of these aspects, not
Hmm.
just to music and sound, but also to the visual side of things. For this release, we could afford to put the price relatively low because of the fairly large print run. We pressed, I think, 15,000 records in the first pressing. That counts all the releases that are part of the box too. But of course, with this amount, you get the price down. You know, it's more challenging for smaller releases. When you only do 500 or 1,000 copies, then some things are just not possible. That's just how it is. But I'm happy that with Holocene we could offer something really unique and really special for a really good price.
You are always looking to new media, like for instance, on Bandcamp, you have released the instrumental versions of Holocene recently in the Name Your Price tagline. Is it important for you to be out there on digital media as well? And how do you see people will be listening to your music, let's say in 5 years from now?
Well, let's be honest. 98% of our fans listen to the band and the label's catalog digitally, I believe, even the people that buy vinyl. And that is completely fine. I do the same. It's just very convenient to use Spotify and the likes, to name the devil, to play music from your phone on your sound system at home. I do it all the time. I also have to say that I have discovered a lot of great things because of the algorithm getting better and better. And it's surprising and shocking how sometimes you run into things you're like, I shouldn't like this, but I do, so it's like it's convenient, and it's obviously not just the future. We're already living in that present tense where this is the reality. But that doesn't mean that people don't want to buy music as physical products anymore. Like, I mean, I think we're the best example that both can coexist, and when I really like a band and when they do put effort into physical music packaging and artwork, then I will buy a vinyl record. But that still means that back at home, or when I'm traveling and touring, I will listen to it, on the DSP of my choice. I think that's just the reality that we live in today, and that's completely fine. For Pelagic, it's like digital income is very, very, very important, I have to say. It's almost that, I mean, clearly without digital income, we wouldn't be able to do what we do with vinyl. That's why we don't do vinyl only licenses. Like, all of our contracts are always including digital. It's a misconception to think that income is free money, because obviously everything that goes into making a record, from the recording and production aspect to physically manufacturing it, all of that produces costs, and you simply need the digital income to recoup these costs. So it's it's not something you can just consider to be extra income or something. It's an integral part of it. So for us, it's very important to be present on all of these levels, both financially and also in terms of just having our catalog available, because that's one of the great things that streaming services offer. Like, the whole world music library is available at your fingertips, and that is generally like something amazing. Like, I grew up in the 90s when I was like trading tapes and like buying 7-inch records at hardcore shows, and like ordering from labels overseas things that were very quickly sold out, and then you never had a chance to get it again. And it was, on one hand, like, I look back at it with the notion of something romantic. It was nice to discover music that way, and it was something more sacred than it is now, when everything's always available. But on the other hand, it's just it's amazing that you can record something and the whole world is out there, in theory, to listen to it these days. So it's a double-edged sword, obviously. But for the Ocean and for Pelagic, we want to be present on all fronts. We've decided not to boycott Spotify, like Brui have, for example, a Pelagic band, and I very much support that decision and understand their reasoning, absolutely. But if we made that the model for Pelagic records, we would cease to exist. And that's unfortunately the reality of it. So it's, for us, that is an experiment and something we can do together with one artist that strongly believes into that. And I'm glad that we can, but we couldn't afford to do that for all of our artists.
Yeah. And do you have somehow of a fear that things being so quickly right now, like the music consumption right now is so quickly, that people can get into one band like this month, and 2 months from now they are over it and into the next band? Do you fear that this can happen right now?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe with the generation that is like in their 20s now, there is a risk of this total overload of the senses that makes them not not take a seat anywhere, just keep drifting and moving around. But that's also somehow an integral part of growing up. For me, it was the same. Like when I was discovering music, I was for a couple of months, maybe even years, moving very quickly between different things until I had found my place. And the bands that formed this place, they were there to stay, and some of them are still there, So I think that's just like being a teenager and like trying out a lot of different things until you realize, okay, this is mine. And I'm not sure that has changed so much with the developments in how we consume music these days. Maybe it has, because like I said before, everything is available now. There's no struggle involved anymore in finding anything, and that struggle was something that kind of shaped my identity to some degree. It was also a lot about intentional seclusion and just like not sharing things because like we had discovered that, and we didn't want the other kids to find out about it because like this was the cool shit that we found. So all of this kind of like has disappeared a little bit, but yeah, it's a trade-off. On the other hand, there's also some positive aspects. So yeah, it's just the reality of it, and we all have to live with it. And I think someone who really loves a band will stay with that band. That hasn't changed, and that doesn't matter if you listen to it on Spotify or if you buy a tape at a hardcore show. Like once you find something that resonates with you and you're like, this is awesome, like you will very likely continue following that band, going to gigs, listening to new things they release, and until something changes in your personal life preferences or your personal evolution.
Yeah, and talking about gigs, you have been in Portugal in May 2022 after a long hiatus of 9 years, I think. How does it feel to be coming back 1 year later?
We're very happy. It was not a conscious choice to ignore Portugal for 9 years. It's just it never really worked out. It's a very long drive on tours, and not only down there, but you also always have to drive all the way back through Spain. And it like at the same time, the economy in both of these countries isn't great, so that fees for artists aren't as high as in other places. So it's challenging. And then tour bus costs have just exploded through the pandemic. Like everything, not just buses, but also crew is like twice as expensive now, and it's just challenging to make it work. That's the reason why we didn't come to Portugal for such a long time, unless it's an invitation from a festival, which we didn't get. So that's why we haven't been there. But now, yeah, we've had a really great show there last May. You were there.
Yeah.
It was awesome. Great venue, great crowd. We've always loved playing there, and I'm happy that we come back so soon now. I think it's also important to not let the gap between, presence in a country get too large, otherwise people will forget eventually. The people that listened to us when we played in 2006 in Cascais,
Yes.
I don't think anyone was at that show,
I wasn't.
It was just too long ago. So so that's why I'm happy now that we come back as part of this festival, which seems to be a cool event, and we're really looking forward.
Yeah, and also Comendatio Music Fest will be, if I'm not mistaken, your first outdoor show in Portugal. Are you looking forward to it?
Yes, absolutely. That's great. Great to finally get to do a small open air.
Yeah.
And and also something that is not just in Lisbon, but also reachable for the Porto crowd, I believe. Because we were actually in Portugal after that show in Cascais. I just remembered we played Heart Club in Porto a couple of years later. It must have been like 2013, maybe 2014 or something. But yeah, it's still 10 years ago.
Yeah. And you're like in the middle of the country now, so it's more reachable.
Yeah.
And have you heard of Comendatio Music Fest before?
I had not until we were invited this year. But it seems to be a really nice little event. Maybe focusing a bit more on the techie side of progressive metal than where we feel comfortable. But it's always nice for us to play in an environment that is not entirely ours. I think that like we're always interested to do this, and also the perception of this band is very different in different parts of the world. Like for example, in Australia, this would be very much our scene. Like the Ocean is seen as a prog band there basically, and the people that come to our crowd is probably like more like closer to the typical Comendatio crowd, if there is such a thing. While in Central Europe, we're seen in a bit of a different light, maybe more in this whole post realm or whatever. So it's interesting how that is different from country to country sometimes. And it's a great lineup this year, and I'm looking forward to seeing all these bands and meeting the Caligula's Horse guys again. We actually toured Australia with them, so we have some history, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah, and can we expect a full headline show from you guys, since you are headlining the first day?
I believe so. I mean, you get what you pay for, right? Yeah, we're gonna do like I think we're gonna do like a 70 to 80 minutes set, something like that. And we've only started rehearsing basically last week. We had the first festival of the season was last weekend, and we met like 5 days before to rehearse after 4 months of not playing together. We took a bit of a break after the end of the Carnival tour in February, because we had been out for pretty much 6 months nonstop, and we were all pretty fried. But now it felt great to get together again and rehearse and play music. And Comendatio is actually going to be the third fest of the season. We have Rockstadt in Romania coming up just 2 days before, and then we're flying straight from Romania to Portugal.
All right. So, and I think this will be a good setup also for the Holocene songs to be played. How have these songs been feeling live from you guys in rehearsals and shows?
Well, to be fair, we've only played 2 Holocene songs live yet, because we've only had 5 days to rehearse, and we also want to take it a bit slow with that record. We're going out on tour in September, October with This Will Destroy You. Unfortunately, that tour won't make it to Portugal, which is why I'm even happier that we get to play now. But even on that tour, we're not going to play the album in its entirety. We're just going to play a couple of tracks of the record, and we're planning to do a full Holocene in its entirety tour next year. Okay. So for now, it's going to be a mixed set. There will be 2 or 3 Holocene tracks in it, but it's also going to be a bunch of other tracks. And yeah, I think the first time, so last weekend was the first time we played Holocene songs live, and it went down very well. I felt that they integrate very well with the Phanerozoic 2 material, which I wasn't so sure about, to be honest, but it's always something like, it's always, when you start playing tracks live, they become different entities somehow, they only then you will really start understanding what they really are, sometimes it seems like. And I was happy to see that they do integrate very well into the set list, which was otherwise mostly Phanerozoic 1 and 2 material.
Yeah, and you can have like a mood shift during the show also.
I mean, our set is always going through moods, and it's a bit of a journey. Like, it's from the beginning to the end, it's going through different zones, I would say. Of course, that depends on like the track order and the set list sequence or whatever. But we usually have a part in the middle of the set, after like a pretty heavy beginning, where it gets a little quieter and more spaced out. And I think for us, as well as for our listeners, it's nice to be taken to places, and if it's always just like full on heavy, or if it's just ambient, then you get bored. Like, it's a long concert after all. It's like a 70-80 minute show. You want to experience something and be taken on a trip. At least I do, when I get to see a good band, and I think it's nice if it's going through these stages and these different moods and zones.
Yeah, and Holocene is the end of your paleontology, like quadrology. Can we say that? And as you said, that there is a difference in the sonic landscape, but also the team, because now you are talking about these specific periods on our time on this planet. And is it different for you, or was it different for you to write about this specific period than when you were writing about the past?
Well, it's always different, simply because a lot of time passes between making records. But both Holocene and the Phanerozoic records were actually written in a way that the music was written first. And and then the lyrics were written and kind of like applied to the music in hindsight. It's usually how we write. The only exception was Pelagial, when there was really the conceptual idea before we started the writing process of the music. But all the other records is always the music is first, and then I start writing lyrics. And that is always, of course, reflective of where I am as a person during that time, and what happened since the last time I was sitting down to write lyrics, and that's always a lot, because there's years in between. For this record, I mean, this record was different in many ways. First of all, even the music I didn't start writing myself. It was all ideas by Peter, or synth guy. And he sent me those ideas without even an intention of them becoming ocean songs, really, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And I picked up my guitar and started fooling around with it. And then in the end, they sounded like ocean songs, but this whole record wasn't even meant to happen. It's just something that happened during the pandemic when, two creative minds were exchanging ideas. So it was very spontaneous in that way. And, there wasn't meant to be another sequel to Phanerozoic 2 along the same conceptual backbone, but once we had this music written, it felt like it connected with the end of Phanerozoic 2, and so that's why we decided to add another chapter to it. So that gives you some insight into how chaotic and unconceptual our writing process is. It is very, very spontaneous and really focused on the creativity and the emotional content of the music, and then we start thinking about, okay, what do we do with this actually? So yeah, so in many ways it was quite different from previous records. And we've also spent more time than ever working on vocals, Loic and me. So that also gave me a bit more time to work on the lyrics. And at the same time, that made them, I think, less conceptual than ever before. I think every track really has its own agenda here. And as with the Phanerozoic records, it's only peripherally related to the geological time periods that are the song titles. It's already with the Phanerozoic records, we've always only used that as a skeleton, basically, and then there was always like an expanded meta level of lyrics that made reference to certain events that happened during these periods, but not in a literal way, and otherwise it would simply be boring. Like, you don't want to make a record that is just like a scientific image or like a copy of a geological time scale. I think that wouldn't work. In order to be impactful, it has to be emotionally dense and tight, and that means it needs to have personal relevance for the people writing the music, and hopefully for the ones with who it resonates as well, in a way that they can project meaning into these tracks.
Yeah, no doubt. And how did the collaboration with Karen Park came along?
So when we started recording vocals, we didn't go about it in a chronological way. Basically, Loic had some ideas for some songs, and I had some ideas for some songs, and we just started recording them. The way we usually do is it's mostly like focused on the melodic arches and the vocal lines, and then I start writing lyrics with that. So we went through this pretty chaotic process, and in the end, Unconformities was the one track that was left over. So I had some ideas for it, and they didn't really work so well. Like, Loic didn't feel it, and then I came to the conclusion that maybe we can use some help for that track, and well, Karen came into play because I'm a huge fan of her and have been for many years. And
have you discovered her on Spotify?
I don't think so, actually. No. I discovered her through Arabrot, and I discovered Arabrot by watching them live in Berlin play with Sue many years ago, the Italian band. And so no. And Karen was a member of Arabrot already then, and then we started working together for the label and took Arabrot out on tour with The Ocean, so that's how it all came about. But yeah, she's always been an artist that I wanted to do something with. She has a phenomenal voice, like really one-of-a-kind voice, that you will always recognize, and I was interested to see how that could work in the context of The Ocean. And then for this track, yeah, I was like, let's give it a shot, and I sent it to her, and she was into it, and here we go. And yeah, she really transformed the track entirely. I was tempted to send her my initial ideas and tell her this is what I had in mind, but in the end I didn't, and I think that was a good thing, because she started from scratch and came up with her own vocal lines and wrote her own lyrics, and that really transformed the track. And in the beginning I was like, wow, this is very different and very good. And I was just like, I was in awe and in shock at the same time, but it only took me like 1 or 2 listens until the shock faded, and I was just like, this is actually genuinely incredible, you know. And everyone I played it to felt the same. And so I'm very happy we did it with her. I'm very happy she was up for it, and I think it's a good match.
Yeah, it feels very good on the album.
Yeah.
And can we expect to see her with you on tour sometime soon?
That might happen. I dearly hope so. I would love to play that track live, and I would love to have her guest with us. It's not going to happen in Portugal next week, I can tell you that much.
All right, so we are looking forward to it. And Robin, how does it feel to have a fossil named about yourself?
I'm very happy and honored. Yeah, super cool. It's actually the second time that a fossil was named after us. Already 2 years ago, they named a deep sea star after the band, basically, and now this insect, early Permian grasshopper, was named after me. I'm honored and very happy. And amazed to see how many paleontologists and scientists are out there that are actually into the band. Like almost at every show, someone comes up to me and asks me things about that, or you know, I realize there's a big scientific community in that field that is listening to heavy music, and I find that quite awe-inspiring and funny also, you know. The other day someone came up to me and said, hey, why did you not have another track on your Precambrian record? You skipped the Ediacaran period, you know. And I'm like, that's true. You're the first one who noticed, but it's actually true. We didn't have another track. That's why, you know, maybe we'll release it as a single track one day.
Yeah. I know Holocene is very recent, but what can we expect for the next chapter in the ocean?
Touring Holocene, starting in September, October, with an extensive European tour with This Will Destroy You. Then we have a couple of things in the making for later in the year. Actually, before that, we go to South Africa in September and then to Australia. So we will be touring a lot for the rest of the year. And then next year, we want to do a US headline tour. We've done 2 tours there last year, so I think it's time now to do a proper ocean headline tour. Mm-hmm. So for the foreseeable future, we're just going to be touring. But we also have a second record that's written, and like we haven't started recording it yet, but it's all there, which I wrote at the same time as Holocene. So while working on those tracks with Peter that became Holocene, I also wrote kind of my own album. And then we decided to focus on Holocene first. So that second album is still there, and I just don't know when we will have time to record it, but I'm also very excited about it. I think there's some really good tracks on it, and that will be the next project. Maybe next year we will start recording it. I dearly hope so, because otherwise it will already get old again. You know, it was, like I said, it was written in 2021. So yeah, that's always the thing. Like if writing for us is very quick, if we could always just like, you know, push the button and have it recorded in perfect sound quality like this and mixed and like just push it out there, we would release like 10 albums per year, you know. But that's what always takes endless to record, to find the right approach to sound, to mix, to work on artwork. All of that is very time consuming.
Yeah. So first of all, we are looking forward to receive you in Portugal for Comendatio Music Fest, and then maybe on a next tour, and then finally new music.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Thank you so much, Robin.
Thank you, and yeah, looking forward to come back soon.